So, Retas, the first full-length studio album from voice of Baceprot. Was it worth the wait? Is it everything we were wanting? Let's think about that. Hey everybody, I'm Wayne, your metal professor, and first, thank you so much for choosing this video from the literally millions you could have chosen. Thank you. If you like it, feel free to give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and by all means subscribe if you have the urge. Now, yes, if you are a several-year fan of Voice of Baceprot, this album is almost certainly worth having waited for. But no, it's not everything we wanted. It's everything we needed. If metal is at its best, when it's saying something, even if that's something you don't necessarily want to hear, but you need to hear, this album does that. These young women, Voice of Baceprot, have something to say. They have a lot of somethings to say, and they are not shy about it. I was introduced to this band through comments from you guys to a couple of previous videos, and thank you so much. I've discovered a bunch of amazing bands thanks to your input, and I really appreciate it. Oh, before we go any further, I don't speak Sundanese, which is Voice of Baceprot's birth language and crops up quite a bit in their music, so please forgive any mispronunciations. Formed in 2014 in Indonesia, Voice of Baceprot is three young Muslim women, and I say Muslim women because it's clear that they are. They even wear hijabs. And I know that they pray before and after their shows, so religion is very important to these young women, but they do not seem to be constrained, shackled by the negative forces that can accompany religion. The members of Voice of Baceprot, more commonly called VOB, are Marcia on lead vocals and guitar, Siti on drums, and Widi on bass guitar. Now, all three are more than competent players, but I want to single out Widi because she is really, really good on the bass. I won't compare her to Steve Harris or the Grand Master of Intergalactic Funk, the legendary Bootsy Collins, but she's really good. Don't make any mistake about that. Now, as a group of young Muslim women, Voice of Baceprot apparently has put up with a lot of grief from segments of their culture that disagree with everything this band is and is about. And unfortunately, that's not really news. All cultures have their subpopulations that are averse to music, averse to change, very averse to metal, and often extremely averse to women, especially young women, having voices, having a say over their own bodies, having a part in the society. So that Voice of Baceprot has had to put up with such crap is not really newsworthy, but they seem to have put up with more than their fair share, and they have soldiered through. Also, I infer that much of Voice of Baceprot's message, which is anti-war, pro-environment, pro-human rights, and so forth, I get the impression that much of their message might resonate even more strongly in their homeland than it does for much of the rest of the world. But it's all important, and certainly there's a lot of the world that needs to take these messages to heart. Okay, on to the album. Retas, as noted, is their first full-length studio album, and I wish I could tell you what the title means, but I can't. The wisdom of the interwebs gives us three possible translations. Seaman, dikes in the geologic sense, I think, and courage. I'm going to go with courage as the translation for Retas in this instance, but you can take your pick, I suppose. In any case, Retas contains 9 tracks, 8 of them are studio, and one of them, a live version of one of the studio tracks, God Allow Me Please to Play Music, is interesting enough that I think we can count it as a track in its own right. Of the album's cuts, 4 were released between 2018 and 2022 as singles. 2 others were released within a month of the album's release on July 13th, 2023, and the remaining 3, as far as I know, have not been heard until the release of the album. One of those previously released tracks, School Revolution, was VOB's initial release back in 2018, and if there's any track that people might question needs to be on the album, it would be this one, just because it's so well known, and there was even an EP released by the band of, I think, 4 different versions, maybe 6 different versions of the song. Anyway, we've heard it a lot, but it is a good song. Given that it was their first release, I would argue that it has earned a place on the album. So let's jump into those songs, shall we? Oh, by the way, I would love to play you an extended sample from each one, but you know, YouTube, copyright strikes, all that kind of thing. So we're going to make do with just a little bit of each song, and hopefully that'll be enough to give you the flavor. What's the Holy Nobel today? An unapologetically anti-war song. This tune cuts straight to the chase. As noted earlier, these young women are not subtle in their message, and if the lyrics to this song are a bit repetitive, that is more than made up for by the emotion in Marcia's voice. Musically, we get mostly power metal, but with some rap-style delivery of some lyrics. There's a declamatory, even shouting tone in places, and as noted, also some very emotive singing. There's also an unmistakably Eastern flavor to some of the vocals and to some of the guitar lines. It's not overused, it's just enough to make us go, hey, cool, and then leave us wanting more. The song even gives us one of Marcia's few guitar solos at about the 2:06 mark. Now, she's no shredder, and that's not a criticism, just a statement, but if we assume that the take we are getting of that solo is a single take rather than multiples spliced together, it's played very cleanly. I don't know that I'll go into this much detail about every cut on the album, but just know that this ambitious structure, this complexity, this mixing of genres and so forth into the overall metal stew characterizes every cut on the album. And all in all, I think this song, What's the Holy Nobel Today, is the perfect way to open the album. If you're already a VOB fan, you'll go, oh, I like that tune. And if you're not, I think this song will hook you in and keep you wanting to hear the rest of the record. PMS. This cut begins with a really catchy riff, and if you're not careful, you'll find yourself humming it for hours afterwards. I know from experience. The title does not mean what it usually means in Western parlance. Rather, and I'm going to have to look at my notes for this, PMS stands for, according to Google Translate, Perempuan Merdeka Sudhunwa, which means fully independent women. And I'm sure I butchered those words. But again, please forgive. The song itself directly addresses the toxic, hypocritical nature of socio-political gatekeepers, those folks who would make themselves look better, at least in part, by vilifying others. But VOB is buying none of that. They address those social forces directly. And they point out, sadly, that what those forces do works, and they also point out the effect of giving in to them. Those folks who bow to such socio-political pressures will find themselves shackled to rules, ideas, and concepts and roles that ultimately do nothing but stifle. There are several effective changes of tempo, a guitar solo-ish, a bass solo, and then at the end of the song, it comes back into that catchy riff and gives us more lyrics, which is great, given how many songs from everybody these days have only 2 verses, sometimes only 1 verse. More lyrics, to me, are almost always better. The track then flows back into its floating affective chorus and ends on kind of a bum 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 sort of thing. As for the language, it's English for the verses, and for the choruses, it's Sundanese in a really beautiful harmony. As noted, I do not speak Sundanese, but here's a very rough translation. Age-oriented. This is a good cut. It might be tied with the following 2 for the honor of being the heaviest on the album. It has a complex structure and 4 primary musical motifs. A crushing power chord bit, a catchy bridge-type section, a rap-ish sort of vocal in the verses, and both in the chorus and preceding each rap-ish type section, a very nicely sung, flowing vocal that has that kind of undulating Eastern quality to which I alluded earlier. I wish I could tell you more about this song, but unfortunately, I really can't tell what most of the lyrics are. Now, I can tell you that the term age-oriented crops up, as you might expect. And despite the music itself, this is not a peppy little ditty. This is a serious tune. It might be about the privileges that come with age and the negative impact of misusing those privileges, but I could be mistaken. The enemy of Earth is you. Maybe the other heaviest track on this album. This song is very pro-environment, especially it addresses those folks who would pay lip service to the planet and to the environment while nonetheless taking no action to back up those words. But the song is not only about environmental corruption, it also touches on hate speech and political corruption and a few other things. There's a really nice instrumental section starting at about 123, and it's almost funk. Swear to Cthulhu. That little section is just about funk, and it's great. But that bit doesn't stick around for long. Multiple mood changes later, all in about 30 seconds, the section comes to sort of a grand crescendo of sorts, and then goes right back into the verse. Kawani. Now here's a ballsy move, an instrumental cut. On most vocal albums, an instrumental cut is death. Even if you like instrumentals as a concept, and I do like instrumentals as a concept, and in actuality, I prefer shred instrumentals, which this is not, but that's not a jab at this song, because, you know, an instrumental on a vocal album is the tune most likely to be skipped on subsequent listenings, but don't skip this one. It's not just good, it's interesting. Seriously, if you stretched Kawani out by another 5 minutes and threw in some shredding, you'd have an instrumental worthy of Iron Maiden. In fact, at around the 1 minute mark, there is a bass line. Well, it's this one. You hear that? Surely that is an homage to Steve Harris's bass line during that languid, creepy section of Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. So when I heard this bit, I was like, hey, I know that bass line. That's cool. Now, if there's a weakness to this instrumental cut, it is kind of a weakness and kind of a strength. There's so much packed into it that as a listener, I kept wanting them to go back to some of the sections they had completed already and give us more of that. But, you know, leave them wanting more is almost always good advice, and Kawani does. Not public property. This song very clearly is about the fact, and that's how I'm going to phrase it, not as a perspective or a position, but a fact that women's bodies are their own. For many, many people, women seem just to be objects for sex, politics, social things, and just plain old misogyny. But again, VOB is having none of that. The juxtaposition of that parenthetical not in the title with the chorus of the song, which is from the perspective of the victim whose body is seen as public property, makes this song both a lament of persecution and a challenge to the persecutors. And did I mention the song is metal and it rocks? I didn't? Well, let me do that now. Like all the other cuts, this is metal and it's good. It's arguably not as heavy as the 3 tracks preceding it, but it's still metal. God, allow me please to play music. This tune came out in 2021, and it is about exactly what the title implies. It is about the desire to play music as a means of self-expression and the surety that no matter what segments of society might think, if there is a deity, and the ladies don't say if, that's just me, the deity almost certainly would not disapprove of music. The fact that a god would not disapprove of music and playing it, however, does not mean that that deity's earthly followers would not disapprove, because many do. I'm sufficiently unfamiliar with Indonesian culture and with Muslim beliefs, and there are many sects of Islam, just like there are many different brands of Christianity. Anyway, I am unfamiliar enough with Islam and with Indonesia that I'm afraid I can't really make any deeper observations about the song. These young women want to play music. They are certain that their deity would not disapprove, just as they know that many in their culture do disapprove, but that earthly disapproval has no ethical or moral impact on the fundamental right to self-expression through music. Revolution. As mentioned earlier, this was voice of Baceprot's initial release back in 2018. And while it's not as heavy as some of the other tracks on the album, it's no lightweight. And it must have been a cultural punch to the head, given its attitude, its content, and of course that it's three young women bringing it into the world. Now, as noted earlier, if there's a song that maybe didn't need to be on the album, it's this one, because it's been released several times already. But as also noted earlier, I think that it has earned its place on the album, and it's a good cut. A live version of God Allow Me Please to Play Music. I was a little on the fence about really discussing this song because, you know, so often we get live versions, many live versions of studio cuts, so many live versions we cease paying attention. How many live albums has Iron Maiden put out? I'm not casting stones, by the way. Maiden is my all-time favorite band. But honestly, I don't need to hear another live version of the song Iron Maiden ever again. But this live version of God Allow Me Please to Play Music is different enough and it's interesting enough that I think we can include it as a composition in its own right. So, my verdict. Voice of Baceprot are the baddest of the bad. And I don't mean bad as in, ooh, bad. I mean bad as in bad mother. These young women are a powerful force for good on the planet. And this, Retas, is an impressive full-length studio debut. If you're unfamiliar with VOB, do your ears and your mind and your soul a favor and get familiar with them. And that's what I've got. Hey, thank you so much for watching. Feel free to watch some more videos like, like these. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you like, and then come back soon. As always, you guys are awesome, and I'll talk to you later.